Hi. All right. Let me see if this is working. Looks like it. Kinda. Okay. Here we go. All right. So I'm Amber Saunders with the Saunders Firm, and we are going live so that we can talk a little bit about estate planning. And I get the same questions over and over again just because people don't have the information. And so um, every once in a while, we're going to pop in and talk about some of these things um, because it's important. Because there are a couple things that are for sure in life. And one of those things is that we will not be here forever. So we're going to go over what estate planning is, what that really means, what's included in it. So that's our first question. What is estate planning? So estate planning is the process, right, of arranging for the management or disposal of your assets during your lifetime or after your death. That sounds real highbrow. So, estate planning is the management of anything that you own. So, your clothes, your necklace, your shoes, all the things in your house, these are all a part of your estate. When you see something that says estate sale, it's because all of these things were a part of this person's estate. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a certain amount of wealth, it doesn't mean any of those things. It's really everyone has an estate. And when you do estate planning, even your body is a part of your estate. So when you do like a healthcare directive or a power of attorney, I'd say that that's also a part of your estate. Um, so generally speaking, any sort of legal document that involves your wishes being carried out with your property, your body, and for the care of any of your descendants. All right. What's the next question? When should I start estate planning? It's a very lawyer answer that I have to give is it depends. It depends on your circumstance. It depends on yeah, pretty much your circumstance, right? All right. So for example, you could be young and young people don't ever they think that life is going to they're going to live forever. But if you have young children, if you're young, if you're in your early 20s and you have children, then you definitely need to do an estate plan because if something happens to you, God forbid, what happens to those children? Who's going to raise them? Did you decide, do you have life insurance? Do you have all of these things that you need to consider when you have another person's, a little human that you have to take care of? So for that person, it might be estate planning starts in your early 20s because you had a child. Um, it could be that you don't really have a ton of assets. You're renting, you don't have a home, you have some money in the bank account, you have things like that, but you still need some sort of plan because let's think if something happens to you. Let's use our recently departed brother, Rich Homie Quan. If you go to the bank, he's in his 30s. And I have people come in the office a lot who don't necessarily think about this, but when you open a bank account, they don't often ask you, who do you want to be the beneficiary of this bank account? Who's your payable on death? You need to name someone because if something happens to you and you pass away and that person can't get into the bank account to be able to pay bills and for your mortgage and other things, if you're driving around 285 and people, nobody in Atlanta can drive anymore. Um, and I say that that's all those transplants, but that's another story for another day. Nobody can drive here. So you get in an accident, you're in the hospital. If you don't have a power of attorney, then who can take care of your bills? Who makes sure that those things are handled for you? If you don't have a healthcare directive, how do they know how you want to be treated? So if you are a living, breathing human, it's never too early to start estate planning. It just might be that you don't have all the documents someone else might have. You might not need a trust if you don't have things that will go through probate court and you can just name beneficiaries for assets to go outright. Um, all right. Okay, so trusts. went straight to this question because everyone on the internet is telling everybody to get a trust. And I think for the most part, if you have assets that are going to go through probate, if you have assets that you want to have some sort of control over to make sure that someone does what you want them to do with it, or you have minor children and you don't want them to turn 18 and go buy a red Lamborghini, then you want to trust, because that's how you're going to be able to dictate how those funds are spent. You can incentivize good behavior. One of my favorite clients, in her trust, when we set up everything, she wrote for her son, she said that there are things that he can have at certain intervals, but literally she had me put in there, get a job. She says she does not want him to use that money and go play video games all the time and just not work, because she has something there for him to be a safety net. She said, you have to be a productive citizen. So the way we set it up was for him to be able to use it under certain constraints. It's not an ATM, but if he's ever in a bind, if he needs it to supplement income, all sorts of things, she's able to still parent while she's not there. So trust can do all sorts of things. You don't have to have Rockefeller money, because most of us don't have Rockefeller money. So we don't need to have some sort of complicated setup all the time. Most people do not need that. And no disrespect, but the people who try and sell it to you are getting fees off of it and things like that. You don't need, most of the time, something that complicated. Right now, those people who need things that are more complicated are probably subject to federal estate tax. In Georgia, we don't have estate tax on a state level, but federally, if you have more than $6 million in assets, then yeah, you might need to think about an irrevocable trust and setting up some provisions and talking to a CPA and making sure that your family gets to keep what you want them to keep. You might need to talk to a financial advisor and have some insurance. Of course, everybody needs it. Some insurance that might make up for what might be taken in estate tax. So there's all sorts of things that you need to do. But it requires some sort of planning. Now, sometimes I don't believe in doing it yourself. I didn't do my own estate plan. But if you need to do it, just at least talk to somebody, because there are some things that a computer can't walk you through. Family dynamics, because you see the worst in human beings when someone gets divorced and when someone dies. I've seen people not talk to their relatives because of things. And we are so much more than our things. And all that you are should be thought of or contemplated when making your estate plan, not just the fact that you had this car and you want to leave it to somebody. You are more than that. And your family's going to miss you when you're gone. And this can be the last gift that you give to them. This necklace I wear every day is my grandmother's necklace to remind me of her every single day. There's someone who's going to miss you. And estate planning is not necessarily for you because you won't be here, but it's for them so that they have room and space to grieve and remember you the way you want to be remembered. All right. Let me see. So some basic components of an estate plan. I'll give you it can get more complicated, but we're gonna keep it simple. Healthcare directive, right? And Georgia's healthcare directive, our standard form I think it has some living will-ish elements, but a living will is not the same thing as a will. So a living will is a document that tells everyone what you would want to happen to you if you were in a vegetative state, if you could not breathe on your own, if there was no brain activity. Do you want them taking you off of life support? So it's for a specific thing. The healthcare directive is going to name an agent who can take care of or make decisions for you physically, talk to the doctor, do all of those things. But outside of what's on that healthcare directive is what they're going to be able to decide. So the one in Georgia says, when do you want these particular conditions on this form to kick in? When you're in a permanent state of unconsciousness, or when you have an incurable, irreversible disease, things like that. All of that's going to be on that form that you can say, okay, if I can't do anything for myself, a big thing for people is quality of life. If you're not going to have any quality of life, if there's no chance of waking up, then hey, allow my natural death to occur. So there are options like that on the document. And then outside of that, that agent can make decisions, but they need to follow what you say on the page. Another aspect of your estate plan that's very basic that you need is a power of attorney, financial. And on the statutory form, it will allow you to pick certain things. You can decide if it's springing, if it kicks into effect when you become incapacitated, or if it is immediate. Now, for most people, I say do springing unless you're married, or somebody who you really trust, because I don't know if you want them taking that power of attorney and running to the bank to manage some funds for you. Then a will, perhaps a trust. There are things that don't have to go through probate court. Manage those things accordingly. Life insurance doesn't have to go through probate court because you can name a beneficiary. Your retirement accounts, you can name beneficiaries for those and it would go directly to that person, and then it doesn't have to go through probate court. So there are ways around it, and what you really should do is just meet with someone and do a full inventory of what you have, what your assets are, and then try and talk through with them what's important to you. Do you want to skip probate because probate can be a nightmare? If you have one child, if you have children who you think will get along and you don't think it will be a big deal, and there's you can update the beneficiary designations to try and avoid probate, and then just let a residence go through probate. Another thing that doesn't go through is jointly owned property. So it depends on how it's jointly owned, but if you own a home and you own it joint tenants with right of survivorship, and that means the survivor is going to own that property 100% when you pass away. So these are some considerations that you need to have when thinking about creating an estate plan. And of course, if you have minor children, guardianship documents, and a real plan for the care of your children in case something happens to you. So I didn't want to keep it too long. It's been about 15 minutes and answered a couple questions. We're going to do this again probably in October, maybe once a month. And so we'll go a little deeper since we went over the basics this time of talking about one of the things that I don't see enough people have that's really important. And I probably will bring one of our partners on is long-term care insurance. One of the things that made it really easy for my mother and my uncle when they had to take care of my grandmother who had dementia is that she had insurance. So there was a nurse who came to my grandmother's home to take care of her and my grandfather when she was sick, when she got to die in her home instead of in a nursing home because she had enough foresight to have insurance to take care of that. So I think we'll talk about some of those topics. But if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. On Instagram, it's at Ask Amber Saunders. LinkedIn, Amber C. Saunders, the Saunders Firm on YouTube and on Facebook. And our office, we do offer consultations. Our office phone number is 678-680-4336. And I will see you next time.